The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was watering the tomato plants in my backyard. The phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out with dirt-stained fingers, expecting maybe a reminder about my dentist appointment or a spam call about my car's extended warranty. Instead, it was from Marcus, my son, my only child. "Mom, Jessica and I have talked about this a lot. We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all. We'll contact you if and when we're ready." I read it 3 times, standing there in the morning sun, with water still running from the hose onto the roots of plants I'd grown from seeds Marcus had given me last Mother's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. My first instinct was to call him. My fingers hovered over his name in my contacts. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the formality of Jessica and I instead of we. Maybe it was the coldness of if and when we're ready that struck me like a slap. I turned off the hose and went inside, reading the message again and again. For 3 days, I did nothing but replay every interaction I'd had with Marcus and his wife over the past year. Had I been overbearing? Certainly. I'd offered advice when they bought their house. I'd been through 2 mortgages myself. I'd suggested Jessica might want to see a doctor when she complained about feeling tired all the time. I'd pointed out that the car seat they'd registered for wasn't the highest-rated model according to Consumer Reports. Was that so terrible? I was trying to help. That's what mothers do. On the 4th day, I broke down and called my sister, Linda. "He wants space," I sobbed into the phone. "He doesn't want me to contact him at all." "Linda, what did I do?" "Honey," Linda said carefully, "have you thought about, well, maybe you've been a little involved in their lives? I'm his mother." "I know, but remember when they told you about the pregnancy? You immediately sent them a list of pediatricians before they'd even told anyone else. I was being helpful. And when they mentioned they were thinking of names, you created that spreadsheet ranking your top 50 choices?" I fell silent. When she put it like that, it did sound excessive. "Maybe just give them what they're asking for," Linda suggested. "Some space. They'll come around." But as weeks turned into months, they didn't come around. Radio silence. I saw on Facebook that Jessica was showing now, her belly round and beautiful. Marcus had posted a photo of them painting the nursery. A soft yellow I would have advised against because it shows dirt so easily. They looked happy without me. The real betrayal came on a random Thursday in November. I was at the grocery store standing in the checkout line when I heard a familiar laugh. I turned and there they were, Marcus and Jessica, 3 aisles over, with an older woman I didn't recognize. She was cooing over Jessica's belly, her hand resting on it in that intimate way I'd been dreaming about. Jessica was beaming. Marcus had his arm around both women. I watched, frozen, as the older woman, who I suddenly realized must be Jessica's mother, Diane, held up a tiny onesie that said, "Grandma's little angel." They all laughed. They looked like a complete family that had no space for me. I left my cart right there in the checkout line and walked out. That night, I went through old photos. Marcus as a baby, as a toddler, at his high school graduation. Just the 2 of us in almost every picture because his father had left when Marcus was 3. I'd raised him alone. I'd worked 2 jobs to put him through college. I'd been there for every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every triumph. And now I was, what? Discarded? Replaced? The anger started as a small flame but quickly grew into an inferno. I began to dig. If Marcus wanted space, fine. But I wasn't going to just disappear without understanding why. I created a fake Facebook profile, Sally Henderson, complete with a stock photo and a few generic posts about gardening and book clubs. I sent friend requests to Jessica's friends, to her sister, to her mother Diane. Diane accepted within a day. Her page was a treasure trove. Photos of family gatherings I'd never been invited to. Posts about her daughter and her son-in-law and the upcoming grandbaby. In one photo from what looked like a couple's shower, I saw my contribution, the expensive stroller I'd had shipped to their house before the space text, even though I'd never received a thank you. It was in the background, still in its box, while Jessica opened gifts from Diane's side of the family, but it was a post from 3 months ago that made my blood run cold. Diane had shared a link to an article titled How to Handle Toxic In-Laws, with the caption, "For anyone dealing with boundary-stomping relatives who think they know better than the parents, trust your instincts, protect your peace, and don't be afraid to cut contact if necessary. Your nuclear family comes first." The comments were a chorus of support from Jessica's friends and family. One comment from Jessica's sister made me grip my phone so hard my knuckles went white. So proud of Jess for finally putting her foot down. That woman was insane. That woman, me. I wasn't insane. I was involved. I cared. I loved my son and wanted the best for him and his family. When had that become a crime? But as I scrolled further, I found more. Screenshots of texts I'd sent to Jessica, shared in a private group with laughing emoji reactions. The texts seemed harmless to me, reminders about prenatal vitamins, articles about safe sleep practices, suggestions for baby names. But in the comments, they called me controlling, overbearing, and unable to respect boundaries. They'd been mocking me, all of them. While I'd been heartbroken over the separation from my son, they'd been having a laugh at my expense. The final straw was a video from what appeared to be a recent family dinner at Diane's house. Marcus was there, laughing, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. The camera panned across the table. Diane, her husband, Jessica's siblings, their children. One big, happy family. Jessica's mother raised a glass. To my beautiful daughter and my wonderful son-in-law, and to my first grandbaby, who's going to be so loved by this family. The emphasis on this was unmistakable. I'd been erased, replaced. Diane had swooped in and taken my place, and they'd all just let her. That night, I barely slept, but by morning, I had a plan. If they wanted to cut me out, fine. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I still had access to something they needed, something valuable. Years ago, when Marcus had graduated college and was drowning in student loan debt, I'd helped him. More than helped, I'd co-signed for a refinance that consolidated his loans at a much lower interest rate. We'd put it in my name for tax purposes, with the understanding that he'd make the payments and eventually we'd transfer it back to him. But we'd never gotten around to the transfer. The loan was still in my name. And according to the paperwork I dug out from my filing cabinet, I was still the primary borrower. Marcus had been faithfully making payments. I could see them depositing into the loan account, but legally, I had control. Was it petty? Maybe. But they'd made me feel small, unwanted, mocked. They'd chosen Diane over me. They'd pushed me out of my own grandchild's life before the baby was even born. I called the loan company. It took 3 days and several frustrating phone calls, but I finally got through to someone who could help me. I explained that I needed to modify the payment structure. The representative was sympathetic when I explained that my son had fallen behind and I needed to protect my credit. That was a lie, of course, but it was a necessary one. I had the payment plan restructured with a new provision. If any payment was more than 30 days late, I could demand immediate payment in full. I then sent a formal letter through the loan company to Marcus's address, informing him of the change. The letter was cold, formal, and gave him 30 days to either pay off the loan or agree to a new payment schedule that would triple his monthly payment. I knew he couldn't afford either option. He and Jessica had just bought a house. They had a baby coming. They'd tapped themselves out. The call came within a week. "Mom!" Marcus's voice was strained, confused. "What is this? What are you doing?" "Hello, Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "I'm surprised to hear from you. I thought you needed space." "This isn't space. This is, Mom, we can't afford this. The loan was fine the way it was. Why would you change it?" "Well, I've been doing some thinking. That loan is in my name, which means it's affecting my credit, my financial situation. I think it's time we settled it properly, don't you?" "We're making every payment on time. You know that." "The terms of the loan allow me to request restructuring. I'm simply exercising my rights." There was a long pause. "Is this because we asked for space?" I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him about seeing him with Diane, about the Facebook posts, about being called toxic and insane by people who didn't even know me. I wanted to tell him how much it hurt to be replaced by Jessica's mother, to be cut out of my grandchild's life before it had even begun. But instead, I said, "This is a business decision, Marcus. Nothing more." "You're lying. Mom, please. We can't do this right now. Jessica's due in 2 months. We can't handle this stress." "Perhaps you should have thought about that before cutting your mother out of your life completely." The silence on the other end was deafening. "So that's what this is," he said finally, his voice hard. "Revenge." "I prefer to call it consequences. You wanted space from me? Fine. But you don't get to keep all the benefits of having me in your life while excluding me from everything that matters. That loan was supposed to help me, not be held over my head. And I was supposed to be a grandmother, Marcus. I was supposed to be part of my grandchild's life. But instead, I see pictures of Diane with her hand on Jessica's belly, buying Grandma's Little Angel onesies, hosting family dinners that I'm not invited to. You replaced me. We didn't replace you. We set boundaries that you refused to respect. I was trying to help. You were trying to control everything. Every decision we made, you had an opinion. Every choice we considered, you had a better idea. Do you know how exhausting it was? Do you know how many fights Jessica and I had because of your interference?" His words hit like physical blows, but I pushed forward. "So you cut me out entirely? Without even a real conversation? Just a text message telling me to disappear? We tried talking to you multiple times, but you never listened. You just kept pushing and pushing. And when we finally set a hard boundary, you call it betrayal? You brought Diane in to replace me. Diane respects our boundaries. She asks before she gives advice. She waits to be invited instead of showing up unannounced. She treats us like adults capable of making our own decisions." Each word was a knife, carefully placed, because somewhere deep down, underneath all my anger and hurt, I knew he was right. I just couldn't admit it. "The loan terms stand," I said quietly. "You have 30 days. I hung up before he could respond. The next few weeks were a blur of escalation. Marcus tried calling several times, but I didn't answer. He sent emails that I deleted without reading. Jessica even reached out, a long message about understanding I was hurt, but pleading with me to reconsider, for the sake of their baby. I almost wavered when I read that one. Almost. But then I thought about that video, about Diane's toast, about being called toxic by people who'd never tried to understand my perspective. I thought about being shut out completely, while Jessica's mother got everything I dreamed of. The deadline came and went. Marcus didn't pay. He couldn't. I made the call to the loan company, and demanded immediate payment in full. When they couldn't provide it, I initiated the process that would damage his credit severely. It wouldn't bankrupt him, he was still making the regular payments, but it would mark his record, make it harder for them to get future loans, maybe even affect the mortgage they'd just taken on. I felt powerful, vindicated. They'd hurt me, and now they'd understand how that felt. The dramatic confrontation came on a cold December evening. I heard the doorbell and looked through the peephole to see Marcus standing on my porch. He looked terrible, exhausted, older than his 30 years, his eyes red-rimmed. I almost didn't open the door, but something made me turn the lock. "What do you want?" I asked, not inviting him in. "To understand," he said, his voice raw. "I need to understand how we got here, how you could do this to us." "How I could," I started, but he held up his hand. "Please, just listen. Can I come in?" Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. We sat in the living room where I'd taught him to read, where we'd opened Christmas presents, where I'd helped him study for exams. The silence was heavy with ghosts of better times. "Jessica went into preterm labor yesterday," he said finally. My heart stopped. "What? Is the baby—" "They're okay, for now. But the doctor said stress was a major factor. They've put her on bed rest for the duration." His eyes met mine, and they were full of pain I'd put there. The stress of wondering if we're going to lose our house because of this loan situation. The stress of her husband's mother weaponizing his student debt against him. That stress. The room spun. I didn't mean what? To hurt us? To put my pregnant wife in danger? Because that's what happened, Mom. That's the consequence of your revenge. "You hurt me first," I whispered, but it sounded weak even to my ears. "We asked for space. That's all. We didn't mock you. We didn't try to hurt you. We just asked for room to build our own family without constant interference." "But Diane is Jessica's mother. Of course she's involved, but she's involved in a healthy way. She doesn't show up at our house unannounced to rearrange our furniture because she thinks her way is better. She doesn't send 20 text messages a day with articles about everything we're doing wrong. She doesn't make every conversation about what she thinks we should do." "I was trying to help," I said again, but it sounded hollow. "I know." His voice softened slightly. "I know you were. But Mom, we're adults. We get to make our own mistakes. We get to learn our own lessons. And when we ask our parents to step back, they should respect that, not punish us for it." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I loved more than anything, and really saw him for the first time in months. He wasn't being ungrateful or cruel. He was being a husband, protecting his wife and child. He was being an adult, setting necessary boundaries. And I'd responded like a child throwing a tantrum because I didn't get my way. "What have I done?" The words came out as a sob. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I've been thinking about something Jessica's therapist told her. She said that sometimes people who love us can hurt us the most, not because they're bad people, but because they can't see past their own pain to recognize the pain they're causing." "I'm not a bad person," I whispered. "No, you're not. You're a mom who loves her son and is scared of losing him. But Mom, you can't hold on to someone by hurting them. You can't force your way into someone's life. Love doesn't work that way." The tears came then, hot and fast. All the anger, all the hurt, all the fear I'd been carrying for months poured out. Marcus moved to sit beside me, and after a moment's hesitation, put his arm around my shoulders. We sat like that for a long time. "I'll call the loan company tomorrow," I finally said. "I'll fix it. I'll put everything back the way it was." "Thank you." "But Marcus, I can't lose you. I can't lose my grandchild. Please." He was quiet and my heart sank. But then he said, "You won't. But things have to be different. We need you to respect our boundaries. We need you to ask before you advise. We need you to trust that we can figure things out, even if we do it differently than you would." "I can do that," I said quickly. "I promise. I'll do better. And you might need to talk to someone, a therapist. Because, Mom, the way you reacted to us asking for space, that's not healthy. That's not normal." The words stung, but I nodded. He was right. I knew he was right. "And you need to apologize to Jessica. Really apologize. Not an 'I'm sorry, but you hurt me too' apology. A real one." "I will. I'll do whatever it takes." He stood up, and I saw how tired he was, how much this had all cost him. "We'll see. This isn't something that gets fixed overnight, Mom. You really hurt us. You put Jessica and the baby at risk. That's going to take time to forgive." "I have time," I said. "I'll wait as long as it takes." The next few months were the hardest of my life. I called the loan company and reversed everything, taking a financial hit in the process, but not caring. I wrote a long, heartfelt apology letter to Jessica, taking full responsibility without any excuses or justifications. I started seeing a therapist who helped me understand why I'd reacted so strongly to the idea of losing control. The sessions were painful. Dr. Chen made me confront things I'd been avoiding for years. My fear of abandonment after Marcus's father left, my tendency to equate being needed with being loved, my inability to see where help ended and control began. Marcus and I started having weekly phone calls. They were brief at first, awkward, but slowly we began to rebuild. He set clear boundaries and I respected them, even when it was hard. Even when I desperately wanted to offer advice about the nursery, or the birth plan, or the pediatrician they'd chosen. I wasn't there when Jessica went into labor. That hurt, but I understood. Diane was there, and Jessica's sister, and that was what Jessica needed. Marcus called me after the baby was born, a little girl named Emma, and hearing her first cries through the phone made me weep with joy and regret. They brought Emma to meet me 2 weeks later. Jessica was cautious, watching me carefully as I held my granddaughter for the first time. I was careful too, hyper-aware of every word, every gesture. When Emma started fussing and Jessica reached for her, I handed her over immediately without comment, even though I knew 3 different tricks that might have soothed her. Progress was slow. There were setbacks. Times when I slipped into old patterns and had to apologize again. Times when the distance between us felt insurmountable. But there were also breakthroughs. The first time Jessica called me for advice, really called because she wanted my perspective, not because I'd pushed it on her, I cried happy tears for an hour afterward. 6 months after Emma's birth, they invited me to her baptism. Diane was there too, and I had to fight my old instincts to compete, to prove I was the better grandmother. Instead, I smiled at her, genuinely, and we worked together to set up the decorations Jessica had chosen. At one point, Diane pulled me aside. "Jessica told me what happened," she said quietly. "I'm glad you're here. Emma deserves to have both her grandmothers in her life." "Thank you," I managed. "I'm trying to be better." "We all are," she said kindly. "Being a mother-in-law is hard. Being a grandmother is harder. We have to learn to let go while still being there. It's a balance." I realized then that I'd made Diane into a villain in my mind, a usurper, when really she was just another woman who loved her family and was trying to do right by them. We weren't in competition. We never had been, except in my own fearful heart. The day of the baptism, Marcus pulled me aside after the ceremony. "Thank you for being here," he said, "and for respecting our boundaries. I know it's not easy for you." "It's getting easier," I admitted. "I'm learning that loving someone doesn't mean controlling them. It means trusting them to live their own lives, even when it scares you." He smiled, a real smile, like the ones from before everything went wrong. "That's very wise, Mom." "I have a good therapist," I said, making him laugh. Later, holding Emma while Jessica and Diane chatted nearby, I felt something settle in my chest. This wasn't the relationship I'd imagined having with my son and his family. It was smaller, more bounded, required more conscious effort. But it was real, it was healthy, and it was enough, more than enough, because I'd learned, painfully and at great cost, that revenge doesn't heal wounds, it only creates new ones. That love, real love, requires letting go. That being needed isn't the same as being valued, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is respecting someone enough to give them the space they ask for, even when it breaks your heart. Emma grabbed my finger with her tiny hand, and I looked down at her perfect face. My granddaughter, not mine to control or shape or mold, but mine to love. On her terms, on her parents' terms. And that, I finally understood, was the greatest gift I could give her. Marcus caught my eye across the room and smiled. In that smile, I saw forgiveness. Not complete, not yet, but growing, healing. It was enough. It was everything.